So, hello, my friends, and welcome to What's Up. I'm John Peterson from the Arlington Institute, and I get together with my friend Gregg Braden every 2 weeks to just chat about whatever's on our mind. And we're going to do it again today for another half hour, and we're happy that you're with us. Gregg Braden, how are you, my friend?
I am really well. I've been on the road speaking at conferences with some amazing people. I'm home for a few days, and I'm going to come see you at the Arlington Institute Transitions Talks, and I'm going to spend the next few days preparing for that. And
Yeah,
I'm excited to be down there. Yeah.
yeah, you'll be with us on the 31st of May. All day long. It's going to be a great weekend. It always is. And it's both live streamed and it's live. And so everybody anywhere can participate. And you can find that information, by the way, those of you who are interested, at arlingtoninstitute.org and transitiontalks.org. So, Greg, what's on your mind?
You know,
What's
John, traveling these last has been probably 10 days. I've been on the road, seen a lot of people, airports, hotels, at the conferences. And, there's a perception that so much of what we talk about is kind of esoteric, kind of theoretical. I want to talk about something very concrete, very real that affects everyone's life today in a very real way. We are in the midst of a global monetary reset, a currency reset. And that means different things to different people. It's historic, and nobody's going to come out and tell us. I don't think you're going to see a flash on CNN. Hey, there's a monetary reset going on. There's some people that mention it every once in a while, but there's a lot of confusion about what it means. A reset doesn't mean a crash necessarily. It doesn't have to be a crash. And we've had resets in our lifetime. We had 1913 and was when the Federal Reserve was established. That was a currency reset. 1944, Bretton Woods established the dollar supremacy the way we have today as a global reserve currency. 1971, we went off the gold standard. That changed everything. 19, was it 85? Yeah, 1985, we had the Paris Accords. And what's happening now is actually called the Mar-a-Lago Accords. A lot of people are pushing back on that, but that is how history is going to know what's going on. And it's fascinating to me. One of the principles, and here's how you know something is actually happening. Gold is on the move on the planet. Gold is moving into nations. It's moving into central banks. They're buying it up like crazy. And I just had some numbers here. What was it? 600 tons in the first 2 months of this year came into the U.S. That's unheard of. I mean, it's crazy what's going on. So people are saying, what in the world is going on? Well, one of the things that is, I think, is driving this is that there are meetings in Basel, Switzerland that give direction and guidelines to the central banks throughout the world. And right now, our monetary system is based on what those central banks are doing. And they've always valued gold. This is really interesting, John. And I've always been fascinated. I don't know the reason for it, but they've always valued gold as a tier three asset, which means they value it as a risky asset, which means banks don't have to have a lot of it on their balance sheets. You don't see a lot of it in hedge fund portfolios unless people ask for it. And here's the mind blower. The official price of gold on the balance sheet of the United States of America was set in 1944, $42.50 an ounce. And that is the official price, even though the spot price right now is somewhere between $3,000, $3,500 an ounce, something like that. Uh, this summer, the designation for gold will move from a tier three asset to a tier one asset. And what that means is that the banks must have it on their balance. They've got to have at least 50% more on their balance sheets. And what that means is that the debt of the United States of America changes because we've got a lot of gold in our treasury valued at $42.50. If it now is valued at spot price, say between $3,000 and $4,000 an ounce, or perhaps even more, that offsets a lot of our debt. Our balance sheet becomes a lot healthier. And the economy of the world reflects that in a positive way. Now, our friend Penny Kelly said that she sees the stock market taking a hit. And when we go back and we look at these previous monetary resets, that's what happens. Anything denominated in the dollars, they want the dollar weaker because they can't sell U.S. goods overseas because the dollar is so strong. So all these tariffs and everything, they're actually driving the value of the dollar down so that we can compete in a fair way overseas. Anything in dollar denominated assets in the past takes a hit for that when this happens, and the hard assets, commodities, things like food and metals, energy, water stocks, things like that. They are the ones that really benefit from something like this. So we're in the midst of a historic time
Yeah.
for a lot of reasons. And what I'm finding is, John, our community tends to be unplugged from things like this. They tend to shy away. A lot of them tend to shy away from because it sounds complex. And it's not just about economies, it's about finance, and it can sound complex. But I think personally, I think it can be a good thing. I think we're looking at a reset of the world, and it needs to begin with something that is going to influence and affect everyone's life, and certainly money and finance and currency does just that. So I'm not an expert in this, can't give any financial advice, but I want people to know this is not business as usual. We're witnessing something historic, and it's not going to play out over the next, 50 years. I mean, we're talking the next few months, next couple of years, we're going to see this happen. And I'm well, if you have any feelings about that, John, are you seeing
Yeah,
the
well,
same thing?
I'm wondering if you're talking about the kind of reset or the RV, they call it, about that, where there's some select currencies that are going to be revalued, kind of to generate parity across the planet that will kind of set the stage for being able to then do some kind of a shift. What they talk about is to a digital currency, the central
Yeah.
bank digital currencies in particular. Is that kind of part of what you're talking about?
I think it is, John. It's all they're all pieces of the same movement. And I think one of the things that encourages me, people ask me about how I feel about the future. I'm an optimist. I'm also a realist. I mean, realistically, I think we're in for some bumpy rides. Optimistically, this kind of thing can only happen when the leaders of nations work together. And what it tells me is that on some level, there is a level of cooperation, a degree of cooperation that we're not, we're being led to believe that America hates Russia and China and America are, doing this. But these are humans. They have families. They are, in this case, three men who have witnessed the horrors and the suffering of the 20th century and know how quickly we can descend into that again. And they don't want that. It's not good for anyone. So, on the one hand, they are looking out for their own nations. Of course, that's their job. And within that framework, they're looking for ways I think, create a greater degree of cooperation. Central bank digital currency, we've had big conversations about this. Realistically, I don't think we are going to stop it. What that is the digitization, the tokenization of the currency that we hold in our hands, that we carry in our wallets today. And I have to say, John, as a scientist, the technology is never right, wrong, good, or bad. Inherently, I don't have any problem with a central bank digital currency. It's the thinking underlying it. If it's done from a place of benevolence, which says, this is going to be a better way, to for the financial system of the world, it could be a very good thing because we essentially do it anyway. I just was on a business trip. Everything was done on, digitally on a credit card, from a bottle of water in the airport to the meals to, I mean, everything is. Where we get into problems is the misuse or the abuse of this. And this is where we have to have guidelines. We've got to make sure that our money, if every dollar we have is tokenized, that it cannot be weaponized to be used against us. And there are ways to do that. There are ways to do that.
Mm.
So I think we're in a digital age. All of our photographs are digital. All of our music is digital. All of our movies. I mean, everything is digital, and it makes sense that money would be too, because so much of it is already. I think we really have to monitor the thinking underlying, and that is happening. We have representatives. We have nations that have said they won't participate if this is abusive. We have senators and Congress people, men and women, on the Senate floor and the congressional floor that are prohibiting this if it's going to be abused anyway. They not to be tracked and weaponized against people. And the weaponization of currency is a lot of what's driving this change because
Mhm.
America, after World War II, America talked the world into trusting us and trusting the dollar, and the world accepted that and bought into our financial system. And then when nations do things that are counter in the past under some administrations, when they do things that are counter to our interest, we turn that trust against them. We violate that trust. We weaponize the dollar with sanctions against Russia as a perfect example. And so the response to that is, well, we're going to build our own currency. So now we have BRICS. We've got was it Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, and a whole bunch of other nations now are building their own economic bloc, and it is backed in gold.
Mhm.
And what that means is that it is a more solid currency. It cannot expand and inflate because every unit that's spent has an ounce of gold backing it. Right now,
Right.
we don't have that, and the proposals are that we have some basket of currencies that are going to be used, not exclusively the dollar, probably the dollar and the yuan and the ruble, I'm sure are going to be part of that. And even digital, Bitcoin is part of that now. And there is a Bitcoin reserve that the United States Treasury is building right now. Interestingly, they're not buying it. It's based on Bitcoin that has been confiscated
Yeah, right.
through illegal actions, and they're allowing that to serve the country. So I don't think we're going to stop this, and I don't know that we would necessarily want to, but I think we definitely have a responsibility to guide how it's done and to make sure that the digitization of currency cannot be weaponized against the citizens of a country, as we saw happen in Canada. We saw that
Yeah.
during the
Yeah,
truckers'
certainly.
protest.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
certainly.
But for that to happen behind the scenes, there has to be a level of communication. There has to be a level of cooperation. And that means there has to be some level of trust. And we have to remember that the leaders of the nations of the world happen to be the leaders that were around during the roughest parts of the 20th century. And they're shifting their mindset from this polarized world of superpowers and using force as the deterrent. That was the big thing during the Cold War. And they recognize that we're moving into a new world, and we're witnessing a change in the thinking of our leaders that's not always portrayed accurately in the mainstream media. They're demonized often to sway our opinion so that we'll support actions against China or
Yeah.
against Russia or something like that. So,
Well, the system needs an enemy, and particularly the intelligence community, and certainly the defense community, and so they really are have a vested kind of interest in trying to keep the game going, and they try to do that in every way possible, including manipulating and controlling most of the press.
Well, they do. And the reason, the other piece that's driving this is the dollar. The dollar is on its way out, and it has to be. It is what's called a fiat currency. And a typical lifespan of a fiat currency is about 50 years because what happens, fiat means that the definition is it is by agreement that
Hmm.
we trust this. There's nothing backing every one of our dollars except the faith and trust, is the way it's
Yeah.
termed, in the American government. We don't have an ounce of gold or platinum or anything else, rhodium or whatever it could be, backing our dollars. So when we get into trouble, which we all have seen in our lifetimes, the pandemic was the most recent. What we do is we just throw more of those dollars into the system and dilute the purchasing power of every dollar that exists. Well, now we've lost over 98% of the purchasing power of the dollar. If you look at the chart from 1913, when the dollar was established, and 44 in Bretton Woods, it looks like a really bad year on the stock market. I mean, it's just a downwards slant. We have about 2% of the purchasing power that we had when the dollar was created because
Yeah.
this fiat and because we are inflating it. And they know that unless something happens, the dollar will go into what's called hyperinflation. And we've seen this. Germany did it in World War II. I think Venezuela, we have seen this, and well, it's happening right now, actually, in Venezuela. So that's part of why now? Why is it happening now? Because if the dollar fails, that is going to hurt the whole world. You know, that hurts the world. But you know, John,
Yeah,
what
but
what
it
I
is like, go ahead. Yeah.
no, no, go ahead, go ahead.
Well, it is inevitable. I mean, everything
Yeah,
works on cycles, and countries and empires and whatever it is, popular music stars, whatever, they all work on cycles and they rise and they fall. There's nothing that's consistent and that stays on forever except change and so it's really there are a lot of people who would desperately not like anything to change, and particularly in terms of things like money and so on, where
yeah.
you've got so much value and it influences your life so pervasively. But nevertheless, everything changes. You know quite well that we're here at the Arlington Institute. Our interest is not to try to sustain the present
Yeah.
or to rebuild the past or to any we I don't believe that it is sustainable, and so we need to begin on the path of trying to build a new world and try to design the next kind of stage of human development and social and economic and all the other kinds of aspects of our life, and redesign those systems in
Well,
a new way.
yeah, I agree, John.
Well,
Of
it's
the
not
20th
only the
century.
thinking, it's the incentives and the structures and the influences
Yeah.
that are, actively trying to shape this whole space. And that those are physical and probably non-physical.
Yeah, well, that new world, John, it's based on cooperation and what biologists call mutual aid rather than competition and
Right.
scarcity.
Yeah, it's really necessary in the middle of all of this uncertainty and chaos, and change is hope. Because what you're being extracted from, unplugged from, untethered from is essentially all of the things that gave you stability in the past at all these different levels, economics and social and even psychological. And so what has to happen is to come together a new set of ideas that essentially allow one to not only one but lots of people to see that there's a path toward this new world, and that it's starting to form, and that it's not all just coming apart, and it's not all just chaotic
Yeah.
like it's that they're trying to make it seem. And that's why I agree that these conversations are so important, is because they start to frame in an intelligent way the kind of options and the possibilities associated with all of this and start to give us a new framework from which to start to think about where this is all going and how hopeful it could be.
Well, in an ideal world, we would have leaders that had the insight to recognize the kinds of things we're talking about, and they would preempt the suffering. They would come together and say, look, it's obvious that what we've been doing is collapsing. What can we do? How can we make this a better
Yeah.
world? And maybe they're doing that to some degree. But what it looks to me, what they're trying to do is to keep the world chugging along and then fix each piece as it breaks.
And again,
Yeah.
so what we got to do is kind of build a new one.
Yeah.
And the situation is ripe for that.
Yeah. Well, you don't want to wait for the day that things stop working to ask the question, what's next? It's good to
No kidding.
have a parallel system already in place, be working the bugs out of that system that can kind of seamlessly, in an ideal world, seamlessly kick in.
Well,
Well,
thanks for again for another interesting conversation. We come to you from the Arlington Institute, which is the little think tank that I put together about 35 years ago. And we're located in Berkeley Springs, West Virginia, our little resort town, about 100 miles from Washington and Baltimore. And we have a variety of projects, and we're all oriented toward facilitating this transition to a new world. And you can find out about it at arlingtoninstitute.org. One of our programs is Transition Talks, and we have a speaker that comes and holds forth to a room full of people, both here in our town. We have dinners and happy hours beforehand and have all kinds of fun, and you meet nice people. But it's also live streamed, and so you can, wherever you are, you can participate. Greg will be with us on the 31st of May, which is only about 10 days away from when we're taping this. And so we hope that you'll check that out at transitiontalks.org. And so thank you, Greg, my friend. Thanks for
thank
the
you.
nice conversation.
Yeah, my pleasure, John. I enjoy it as always, and I look forward to being in your part of the world in just a few days.
Yeah. And see you all in about 2 weeks. Take
Thank
care.
you.